Hey. All right. Let me see if I can share my screen here. I have a bit of a presentation that goes along with it. It sometimes is easier to sort of represent what we do in a day visually than just me talking. So let me see if it'll let me figure it out.
I made you a co-host.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps.
All right. Can you guys see the presentation now?
You betcha.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Okay, so move all my stuff. All right, so we are AARCS, or the Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society. So I am up here in our Edmonton shelter. We actually have two shelters. We have one in Calgary and one in Edmonton. So we'll talk a little bit about both of them, as we do operate a little bit differently. So it gives a little bit of a different opportunity for, different jobs and different employment and different kind of areas within the shelter as well. There are a couple of videos that I'll try and play as well. Hopefully they will work. But some of them are a little bit hard to watch. We don't get always a beautiful, perfect little animals come in. So if you're concerned about that, feel free to just not watch, totally fine. But they are also quite sweet and they make me tear up a little bit. So, okay, this is me. So my name is Lee McLean. I am the operations manager here in Edmonton. Basically what my job is to run the shelter. So I operate the whole thing, which feels crazy sometimes. But basically my job is to make sure that our team is functioning, that our budget is adhered to, that our animals are okay, and that we're moving forward with the shelter. So we're a pretty new shelter here in Edmonton. Calgary is where our base of operations is. So for here in Edmonton, we have a bit of a different direction than what Calgary is, which I'll show you in a minute here. So my job is a little bit different than our other operational managers down in Calgary. So I get to do a little bit of a, exciting hands-on stuff that doesn't always happen down in Calgary, but it's been a lot of fun. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Animal Health. My sort of focus was on behavior and welfare of animals and the development of the human-animal bond. So basically with my schooling, I learned a lot about psychology of animals, how they think and what they feel. I've also learned a lot about their behavior. So what that psychology and their sort of mental health will do for their physical health and their physical behavior in shelter. Shelters are stressful spaces for animals. We cannot make them not stressful. The best we can do is try and make them as comfortable as we can. But of course, as I'm sure all of you probably have seen before, animals in shelters don't always act the way that they would in a home. So we have to take that into account when we're dealing with the animals in our care. I have been working in shelters for 8 years. I started right after university, and I spent majority of the time in shelters working as a behavior specialist. So I spent a lot of time doing assessments on the behavior of cats and dogs, as well as doing behavior modification for dogs that were challenging in the shelter. So lots of fearful animals, lots of impulsive, goofy teenage animals, basically just trying to help them through whatever behavioral challenges they had so that they could find well-rounded homes for them. Other things that I enjoy doing, I curl. I've curled for 17 years. So if anybody curls here, raw. I also am a wedding planner on the side. So I enjoy weddings. I think they're a great time. I also make soap. I find that these things are really helpful for me to try and kind of separate myself a little bit from the shelter. Animal welfare can be very all-encompassing. It can really take on a world of its own and be a part of your life that's really can be very difficult sometimes. So this sort of external stuff helps me just sort of, let it go a little bit and still see the positives in the world when things are not so positive here. I have an 8-year-old domestic short-haired cat. His name is Blue. You can see a picture of him there. He is the most handsomest boy. He is my child. I love him. But he's been with me since he was just a wee little kitten. And he is actually fully clicker trained. So he's trained just as a dog would be. He has a whole lot of tricks that he does. He knows his name. He spins in both directions. He sits, he lies down, he closes doors, he jumps over things. He's a great time. People always are like, what, you trained your cat? So I sure did. Okay, so this is a little bit about us as an organization. So we are a grassroots animal welfare organization, which basically just means that we came from very small roots. We were a volunteer-run organization for a long time. Animal welfare as a whole is very commonly volunteer-run. So there are definitely larger organizations like the BC SPCA, which are very large funded organizations. But a lot of the sort of smaller rescues like ours and a lot of the other sort of smaller rescue and sheltering organizations are not funded, and we're completely nonprofit. So basically that just means that we don't get any funding from governments. We have all of our funding come from donations, fundraisers, things like that. All right, this is the video. It's a little bit sad, so if you need to cover your eyes.
We can't hear it, Lee.
Okay, let me see. I might be able to.
Also known as AARCS, is a safe haven for homeless animals. Our shelters provide a safe place for abandoned, abused, and neglected animals, and our on-site veterinary hospital provides medical care for thousands each year. Our vast network of volunteers and foster homes across the province gives second chances for these deserving animals. This is all made possible through the generous support of people just like you who have joined us in our mission of changing lives through kindness. There is an ever-growing demand for our services and programs in remote and rural communities in Alberta with limited resources.
This dog is clearly injured.
Our focus is to expand our reach and build relationships beneficial to both communities and their animals.
Together we are kind.
Together we are strong.
We are caring.
We are safe, grateful,
Compassionate. Okay, now where are you going?
Meet Q-Tip. Q-Tip was a kitten rescued in northern Alberta found frozen to a deck. She suffered from severe frostbite on her ears, paws, and tail. Without our rescue crews, medical team, and foster parents, Q-Tip would not be here today. But look at her now. She's thriving in her loving adoptive home. Every animal has a story to tell. Once a dog nobody knew, nobody cared for, and nobody wanted. This sweet girl is now known as Aspen and is somebody, thanks to the kind-hearted actions of individuals dedicated to making a positive impact in the lives of animals.
All about the belly rubs.
Oh, look at that frog.
Within these walls, we provide shelter, security, medical care, love, and new beginnings. And with your help, we can end suffering and save countless lives.
No act of kindness is too small. Join us today. Together we can change lives.
Okay, so you guys can kind of see from that, sometimes it's not so pretty. Right, but there are a lot of really good, positive things that you can see as well, right? Okay, so this is our Calgary shelter. So I'll note that that video is specific to our Calgary shelter. Obviously, we are now a part of that, but we're a pretty new shelter. So we've just sort of started participating in some of those outreach programs and stuff like that. So our shelter in Calgary is temporary housing, which is for newly animals that coming into our care, emergency shelter as well, quarantine shelter, veterinary hospital, and a donation center, and our headquarters. So in our Calgary shelter, we see a lot more variability in sort of, opportunity for employment, obviously, because we're a larger facility there. We have a whole veterinary hospital down there. Veterinary care is a pretty substantial part of animal rescue. And we're very lucky to have our own animal hospital down in Calgary. We also have dog caregivers, cat caregivers. We have a whole team on our rabbit side. All of these people are really contributing to what the animals need while they're in our care, so that they can maintain, healthy lives while they're here, and they can move on to a positive, home in the future as well. Another really quick video. So this one is specific to our shelter down in Calgary. It just gives you a bit of a tour, so you guys can kind of see what it looks like and how that shelter sort of looks. Our Calgary shelter is separated into different sections. So we have a cat area, we have a dog area, we have our vet clinic, and everything is sort of separate. So for the Calgary team, all of our staff will work on one specific team. So they're a little individual, while up here in Edmonton, we're all one team. So we all kind of do a little bit of everything. We do a lot of dishes. This is our behavior team. They're working with a fearful dog. There, so you kind of got to see a little bit of what we do on a daily basis down in Calgary. So every single day, those things have to happen. We collect donations, we sort those donations. All of those things are always the same. We have to feed all of our cats, feed all of our dogs. All of the dogs get behavior work every single day. There are also foster homes that we work with. We also have fundraising opportunities and stuff like that. So it all works together to make a very kind of cohesive, crazy unit of a bunch of different people working towards one big goal. So in each area, although they do different things and there are different kind of backgrounds for each of those areas, obviously in our vet clinic, we have mostly trained veterinarians, medical assistants, and RVTs. But in a lot of our other areas, not everybody has any kind of real specific training. For shelters, in a lot of animal welfare, with the exception of the veterinary sort of field, a lot of people come into it with their love of animals and not a whole lot else. So for myself, I studied animal welfare, but the rest of my team actually doesn't have any background in animals at all. So most of my team actually came into the program through volunteering. So that's a really good opportunity, especially in sheltering, for people to get involved without necessarily having to have a bunch of open positions right away, because it can take some time sometimes to find the right position. So we find that our volunteers are a really great place to start, and then it can help kind of gain that experience that people are looking for to be able to move into a paid position in the future as well.
That's great, Lee. We have a hand up. I think
Oh,
Lily
yeah.
has a question.
Yes, please.
Lily.
You guys do a great job taking care of the animals. I live down here in Calgary. I have been to the Calgary once 2 times, donated money. And I think my grandpa still donates money to the Calgary one. I have been there to drop off. I've been to, when I donated money, we got a tour of the place. And it was kind of sad to see the animals. We couldn't really see the dogs because they didn't want us to, like, I guess, make the dogs hopeless. I don't know. We saw them, but we couldn't like play with them. We could like see the cats. And then the second time, we weren't allowed to go in when we donated our stuff when my dog passed away. But you guys do a really great job, I must say.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
welcome.
that. Yeah, Calgary is a little different for us than us too, really, because our Calgary shelter operates as a completely private location. So, we don't have public adoptions through our Calgary shelter. They operate really primarily as a quarantine facility. So, when we have animals that could potentially be behaviorally challenged or that could potentially have medical challenges, sometimes it can be harder for them when we bring lots of people through. But for us in Edmonton, we're a little bit different. So if I can show you guys there. So for us in Edmonton, we actually have public open spaces. So we can have, people come in and see the facility and do adoptions on our site, which is really different than what we have in Calgary.
Yeah.
We do also have sort of emergency and quarantine areas here, but I will take all of you for a tour if you want it. So come on by.
Next time I'm in Edmonton,
Yeah,
I definitely tell my mom, hey, can we go to
definitely.
Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. I love showing off our shelter. I think it's really beautiful. So I like showing off to everybody. All right. So, like I had said, North Haven operates a little bit differently than our Calgary shelter does. This picture on the bottom, this is mostly volunteers with 2 staff. So the 2 on the, I suppose, I don't know where you're looking at it, but the green sweatshirt and the one right above her, they're both our staff members. And then the rest of this team is all volunteers. We joke that that's their if they were releasing an album, that would be the front of the album. But we operate primarily as temporary housing for dogs. We don't have dogs available for adoption, which is not a super common thing for a shelter with a facility. We have a lot of rescues in the area and around Alberta that have dogs available for adoption through foster homes. And we choose to do the same thing, but in other areas that have actual facilities like the Humane Society here at Edmonton, they have dogs available for adoption on site. So sometimes people want to come in and see the dogs that we have, but most of the time they're just here to see the cats, which is perfect because that's what we have available for adoption. We do adopt out cats, kittens, and small animals. Small animals are everything from rabbits to guinea pigs to hamsters to ferrets to sugar gliders to chinchillas, all sorts of fun stuff. We have currently bunnies and guinea pigs, but we have had all sorts of fun stuff through here as well. We also have a donation center. So all the time we are getting in all sorts of things for donations. They're all extremely useful. So if you ever looking at something and going, I wonder if a shelter can use this, they probably can. We don't purchase a lot of stuff because we are a nonprofit. So that's something that we think about too with our team is we want to try and use as much as we can, that we can reuse as much as we can. So we don't want to have to continue to purchase things that are new. We have to be very careful about our budget and what our sort of money is around the shelter because we don't have any funding and a lot of it comes in and fluctuates. Over COVID, we've had a lot less in terms of donations because people are just struggling a little bit more. So we've had to make adjustments to what we do as an organization to make sure that we have, enough to continue to function. And then this is just a quick little tour of our facility and you'll see it looks quite different. No, go back. There. Sometimes we get the world's cutest puppies. Like,
That
how
was
can you
just
resist
my
them,
thought,
right?
too. I'm like, how do I get to work here? I want
Yeah.
to work there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There are a lot of things that we get that are really frequent. So in the summer, especially, we call it kitten season. So what we see in certain seasons is we'll see increases in amounts of certain types of animals. So in the summer, we see an increase in pregnant moms, kittens, and puppies. So everybody's going out and making babies, and then those babies end up with us. So we do find that during the summer, we tend to have a higher intake. And if you guys might have noticed in the pictures of all of the kennels in our shelter, we have two areas to the cat kennels. So there's a smaller side with the litter box and a larger side with the housing that's sort of their like living space. And that's actually something that is very scientific. So, you know, all of us work in this field because we love animals and we want them to be happy and we want them to be healthy and we want them to be loved. But animal welfare has a lot of science behind it as well. There is a lot of research that goes into appropriate housing for animals in shelters, what we can do to help them behaviorally and mentally work through the stress of being in a shelter, what we want to sort of see in terms of medical care, what our protocols are for vaccinations and dewormer and spay and neuter. And there's a lot of research that goes into that so that we have a good understanding of what will happen if we decide not to spay and neuter an animal, or if we decided to, you know, put them in a space that was smaller. We have a lot of information on what can happen with them. So our kennels for our cats are basically designed out of a research project called Capacity for Care, which basically is a project that determined what, based on space, quality of sort of care. So how many people we have to care for them, how much time we have to care for them, how much money we have to care for them, and how many animals we get in a year. Capacity for care is our max number. So it really depends on the time of year and what we have going on, but we always try and maintain our numbers under capacity. So that's why sometimes when it's really full and you might see rescues or shelters say, you know, we're full, we're at capacity. That's what it means. So we have to be really diligent about that. And that's part of my job as well, is to look at the numbers of cats and small animals and dogs that we have in shelter at the time, and to say, okay, we can take this animal in right now. Maybe we can't take this animal in right now. Let's see what our future intake is going to look like. Is there going to be a big intake coming in from a community that needs help? Or are we going to have a large, you know, kittens are going to be born shortly? Do we have foster homes for them? We really have to look at all of these kind of little things to determine whether or not we have the capacity to care for these animals. Because if we don't have the capacity to care for them, then they're not receiving the care that they deserve, right? So we have to be very careful about that and make sure that we're really being diligent about that, which unfortunately can be really hard sometimes because we want to help everybody, but it doesn't always work out that way. So with our kennels, they're based off of capacity for care because they're based off of the ideal situation for a cat in shelter. So they have an ideal amount of space. They have an ideal amount of space based off of safe disease management. Obviously, with a large number of animals, we have to be very careful about disease management. A lot of animals that come to us have illnesses, injuries, are not vaccinated, and could be carrying things. We want to make sure that they have enough space to maintain a comfortable living area, a separate litter box area, but also are not going to spread that information, that sort of illness or injury or whatever is going on with them, to other animals in their vicinity. So that's why we have these big open rooms with very few kennels in them. So it gives us a chance to make sure that they have enough space to, you know, be in a space that's good for them, while also not spreading it out to a bunch of other cats that are right across from them. All right, and then this is our vet hospital. So this is kind of what they work on. Vet hospitals in shelters are a little bit different. So when we think of a vet hospital or a vet clinic, there's usually veterinarians, a number of veterinarians, there's registered veterinary technicians or RVTs, and there's medical assistants. So there are varying levels of training for those three things. But in a regular clinic environment, it's typically either owned by a vet itself or by a vet company. In a shelter, our vet clinics are not allowed to operate as public vet clinics. So somebody who had a cat that was injured, if they bring us their cat, we are not legally allowed to treat that cat. So shelters have to fall under a little bit more kind of specialty licensing because we're operating in a bit of a different sort of purview than other vet clinics. So that's something to think about as well, is if you're looking at working in a vet clinic, their jobs are going to be a little different than what a shelter vet clinic would look like because we have different licenses. Most of what we do in our vet clinic in Calgary is spays and neuters, vaccines and dewormers, and additional surgeries. So those additional surgeries can be anything from dentals to leg amputations, tail amputations, orthopedic surgeries like fixing a hip or a knee that's been damaged, broken bones. Obstructions is if an animal eats something and that thing is blocking their intestines. And we also treat a lot of things like mange. Mange is caused by a mite. It is a transferable disease, so we have to be very careful with that. We as human beings can catch mange, but there is also Demodex, which is similar. It looks very similar, but it's not transferable. So there are lots of things we have to be really careful about. We can't run around all willy-nilly. We have to be very diligent in shelters about making sure that we're following disease management protocols and testing properly. All right, these are just some numbers so that you guys can kind of have an idea of what a shelter might look like on a yearly basis for how many animals we deal with. So our dog program in 2021, we took in over 1,300 dogs and we had about 1,273 adoptions, which is pretty substantial. That's a lot of dogs. Our cat program was 2,700 intakes. Small animal program was 168. And then we have a SNAP and TNR program. So SNAP is spay-neuter assistance program. It is intended for Indigenous communities that need a little bit of extra help. They might not have access to spay-neuter programs. We are legally allowed to help them as part of that program. So we have sort of snicked that into our licensing, but it's a very specific program. And TNR is trap, neuter, return. It's a feral cat spay-neuter program. These cats are not owned. The idea is that we trap them, we bring them into our care, we spay and neuter them, we give them a vaccine, a dewormer, and a tattoo, and then we place them back into their feral colony. So I think I saw a little hand up. Did anyone have a question? No?
Doesn't look.
That was just a clapping gesture. Yeah, good job.
Cool. All right. Other programs that we have are humane education. So that's another one that's a really cool area of sheltering that not everybody knows about. Humane education is everything from going to schools and teaching children about sheltering and how we can be sort of responsible pet owners to, going out to universities and working with other groups like this one to educate people on sheltering and what sort of opportunities that we can bring. We have a pet food assistance program, which is similar to a pet food bank. What it does is it helps families in need with pet food. It is a completely free of cost program, but it is completely based out of donations. So if nobody donates pet food to us, we can't offer this program. So it is a little bit of give and take in that way. And then we have a dog and a cat house program. Those are for outdoor animals living on communities in northern Alberta. We build insulated dog and cat houses to provide them with care in the winter. All right, I just thought you guys would like some pictures. These are just some examples of some dogs that we have in care. So most of them are puppies. As you can see, we've got lots of puppies, mamas with little babies as well. They take up a lot more space and a lot more care. When you think about a mom, they have to be with those babies for a minimum of 8 weeks before we can move them out. So that's going to require 8 weeks of care as compared to an adult dog who's already spayed and neutered, has already got vaccines done. They might take 2 weeks as compared to 8 or 9 weeks. So that will change as well what care we're able to provide to them and what we need to make sure that we're able to do with our staff and our volunteers and stuff like that as well. And our kitty cats. I love these little black and white guys and the torties on the corner. They look so floofy and crazy. It's like they were shocked. All right, and our small animals. This little video is just really cute. This is one of our bunnies in care. But our small animal program is fairly new. We don't see a lot of rabbits come through the shelter, but we have been seeing a lot more. Like, look at that little snoot. How do you resist that, right? Like, seriously. She's so cute. Rabbits are something that, I feel like is a very niche situation. So a lot of people know a lot about dogs or a lot about cats. But as a rescue or as an employee of a rescue, we kind of have to know a little bit about everything. So, we kind of have to know a little bit about bunnies and a little bit about dogs and a little bit about cats and occasionally a little bit about other things too. We got a goat once. It happens, so it was like, okay, what do we need to do for this goat? Because it's a completely different situation. So we you have to have kind of a little bit of everything, but that's in a lot of ways something we can learn too. So, oops. Okay, so this is just sort of our general spiel. This isn't specifically about sort of employment opportunities, but this is what we tell people is the best way to involve themselves with a rescue organization. In our rescue, I have 5 staff, including myself in Edmonton. So we're a very small team. We don't have a lot of new opportunities, but we hopefully will as we grow. So, obviously because we're a nonprofit, we don't always have a full team all the time. But there are other ways. Like I said, our volunteer base was a really good starting point for, I believe, all or almost all of my team. I came in just as a general human being who had previously worked in shelters, but my shelter supervisor, my adoptions coordinator, and my part-time adoption or animal care coordinator, they all came in as volunteers first. So that was a really good way for them to gain some experience and understand what it was like working in a shelter from, a day-to-day basis before they decided whether they wanted to come in for a full-time position. Okay, this is just some sort of social media. I don't know if anybody is a big Instagram person. I'm not a huge Instagram person, but these are kiddos that were Instagram specifically. So Minnie Mouse was this teeny tiny little creature. She's a Chihuahua. She came in really young and really emaciated and really struggling, but she grew quite well. You can see she's doing really well now. So those are the kind of things that we really see as positives. Obviously, situations seeing kittens come in like this is not great, right? And in this case, both of these kittens had an eye removed. And you can kind of see, there they are now with their little eyes missing. Like little opposites, they make up one kitten. And then Kenzo actually ended up, he had a broken leg. I think he'd been hit by a car. So he ended up having that leg amputated. So you can see that's another big surgery that happens in our vet clinics. And most of the time, those kind of surgeries result really, really well. The animals do really well after that. Okay. So I'll show you one more little video and then we can ask all the questions that you guys have. I think it's pretty close to the end anyways. But this is Kelsey. She was our cat manager down in Calgary. She managed the entire cat program. But she actually was the one that fostered Mouse. Oh, sorry. But this is just a little transformation for her. It's just sort of a slideshow of some pictures. She was just tiny. No lack of confidence, though. Not any. So you can kind of see the transformation there after she grew up. And that's the value that we put on foster homes too. Animals do really well in foster. They do less well in shelter sometimes. So foster homes are a really wonderful way for us to be able to give them additional care, to give them a little bit of extra love, some socialization with other animals that are also of similar size or temperament that we can give them to learn from each other and to grow as individuals as well. Oops. Awesome. Okay. So that's our website. If you guys were interested, I can always send it if anybody is curious. We also have a bunch of social media that we post all sorts of stuff on. So that's always good to follow as well. So let me stop sharing here and then you guys can ask me all your questions. There we go.
Oh, this has been great. There's so much that goes into a shelter that
Yes.
I think sometimes me as a common folk don't actually know.
Yeah, I always find that the science behind it is really interesting because people don't always know like how much we think about those things and how much we think about their mental health and their physical space and stuff like that.
Yeah, and how that works. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Lily.
What do you do if you see like these rabbits that aren't supposed to be in the wild, like that are not your average rabbits?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually see that all the time, all the time. People, for some reason, sometimes decide that if they don't or can't care for their domestic rabbit anymore, that because they've seen hares outside, that they must be able to go and just drop their rabbit outside and they'll become wild. And it doesn't work like that.
Because in my complex, I have seen two rabbits and a hare, and my dog wanted to chase this rabbit and was like, no, let's not chase it. The cool thing is this one rabbit and the hare were like, she was following around the wild rabbit, and I thought that was cool, but I was like, they're not supposed to be out here. They're like, and one was like hiding under like a bowl, and that I guess people don't suggest when you have little animals like that, don't put like little cage or like little things because they will get scared and hide. My mom had a guinea pig and she had a shoebox and they like to hide, and
we actually have boxes here for our rabbits too. They love them. They think they're great.
She took the box away because her guinea pig was scared of other people, was scared of her, and did not want to like go out of her little box area.
Yeah, something that we work with really frequently, which is another part of sort of animal care that doesn't get talked about all the time, is bylaw. So animal bylaw is usually operated through the county or the city or wherever you are. It's usually funded by the city or by the county. And they typically are responsible for stray animals within the sort of limits of that bylaw. So for instance, in Edmonton, Edmonton City Animal Control is responsible for taking in all stray animals, cats, dogs, rabbits, all that fun stuff, domestic animals within city limits. So in our case, if someone comes to us with a stray kitten that they found within the city limits, legally, it has to go to bylaw first. We are not allowed to adopt out that animal until it has followed through a very specific stray hold period and it follows bylaws processes. So it depends on the area that you're in, what that bylaw is. Alberta has about 400 different bylaws, which is crazy and doesn't make any sense. But, you know, if you're in St. Albert and you find a stray cat, they don't have a cat bylaw, so they don't care. So they'll say, take a cat to wherever you want, and they don't have to hold them for any kind of a stray period at all. It doesn't matter to them at all. They don't. Yeah, exactly. But if you're in Edmonton, the animals have to go to bylaw for 4 days if they have no tags and no microchip, and 10 days if they do have any kind of ID. So, it really depends on where you are, but that falls into the rabbits as well. If it's within city limits and we see domestic rabbits that are, those typical kind of like smaller rabbits, hares look a lot like domestic rabbits sometimes, but usually they have longer legs, longer ears, longer necks.
Yeah, and they're like bigger too.
Right. Yeah, they're bigger too. Those guys, even a domestic rabbit in the city is also going to go to bylaw for Edmonton. But again, somewhere like Sherwood Park or surrounding areas, they don't have bylaw for those animals. So it's a little bit of a guessing game sometimes when someone comes to us with, X animal and says, I found it in X spot. And we have to try and figure out what is bylaw for that area.
Yeah.
Can we legally take this animal?
Yeah.
Do we need it to go somewhere else first? So that's somewhere that we have to kind of be careful of too. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's so hard. And unfortunately, these people who bring in these animals are just trying to be good citizens, right? They're trying to help the animal. And, as much as we really want to be able to take in these animals in Edmonton, legally, we're not allowed to. They have to go to bylaw. So it's then more work for that person to have to take that animal to bylaw. And it can be quite frustrating for people who want the animals to come into care right away and they don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
But we have to send them somewhere else. So that can be a challenge as well.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
That's great. Thanks, Lily. We also had a question/comment in the chat, and also something I'm wondering about. I've heard now from like multiple people within the animal industry that the kind of biggest stepping stone you can take is to do some volunteering. And Aaliyah was wondering about different volunteer opportunities with you.
Yeah, that's totally true. Totally true. Yeah. Volunteering is a really good way to get your foot into the water without jumping in headlong. Because it gives you the opportunity to do it as much as you feel like is right for you. Sheltering can be a lot. It can be a lot of work. It can be a lot of emotion, and it can be a lot of compassion. It's a compassionate field. We do it because we love things and we want to share that love, right? But unfortunately, when we love things, it can hurt sometimes. So volunteering is a really good way for people to get involved without having to, completely immerse themselves when they're not quite sure. In our shelter, we have volunteer opportunities in a bunch of different areas. One of the big ones is our caregivers. So we have a very small staff team. Our caregivers are the ones that really help us with making sure everybody has food, water, cared for, clean, snuggled, walked, all that fun stuff. If we didn't have our volunteer base, it would take us all day to feed and clean and water these animals. We have a capacity for about 65 cats and 14 dogs. That's a lot when you have 3 people on staff at any given day. So our volunteers are really, really instrumental in helping with our caregiving. For our dogs, we have 3 caregiving shifts. We have a morning, a noon, and an afternoon and an evening. And for our cats, we have a morning and an evening shift. So our volunteers, you sign up basically online, you put in an application. And then from there, you'll go through a little bit of training online. It's basically an orientation, just talks to you about AARCS is probably mostly the stuff you guys have already seen now. From there, we have level 2 and 3 training. 2 training is a tour. 3 training is a hands-on shift with our staff and our volunteers. So once you get in and you're part of the volunteer program and you already have done the training, you can sign up for as many or as few shifts as you want. We ask for 2 per month, but obviously if you're like, I'm going out of country for 3 weeks, I'm not going to hold you to 2 per month. So, we ask for 2 per month, but you can choose to do whichever ones you want. So if you like Wednesday mornings, you can do Wednesday mornings. If you like Thursday afternoons every 2 weeks, you can do that. It kind of is really up to the volunteer as to what works best for them. Other opportunities that we have are a little bit more general. So we have transport volunteers. They sort of transport our animals all over the place. We have our vet hospital in Calgary. They do a lot of our spays and neuters. So we do a lot of transferring back and forth of dogs, of cats that are going for surgeries, foster homes throughout Alberta. So we have to transfer animals back and forth to foster homes. We pick up donations. We go and help at rural communities. Those are all volunteers that help with that. We have donations and inventory volunteers that help us sort through all of the donations that we have that come in, because we get some pretty fun stuff sometimes. I once got a big giant jug of baby powder, probably this big. I don't know why, but sometimes we get fun stuff. So we sort through all of that stuff and see what we can use and what we can donate to other areas. Anything that we don't use, we either can send out with outreach. So if we have part of our pet food bank program, or we can send them out to communities in need, or we can send it back to like a Goodwill or something like that. So we don't throw much in it away. We do try and kind of rehome as much as we can. Other things that we have for volunteers is we have administrative tasks. We have our adoptions help volunteers. We also have events, so our event volunteers can really be helpful. We do laundry and dishes. We have sort of general stuff like sorting crates and things like that. But yeah, it's a lot of different opportunities and different sort of, you can kind of do as much or as little as you wanted. So if you wanted to come in as a donations volunteer, you wanted to try that out, and then after the fact you said, I really want to do cats, you can add that on. You don't have to do one or the other.
Very cool. That's great. I think that's a big step to take to do that.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, at least within this industry, that experience is invaluable. I think that's where you learn most.
Yeah.
You said that you did some post-secondary to kind of be where you are now.
Yeah.
Would you say anybody that kind of wants to break into this industry, volunteering is kind of one route? Would post-secondary be, that would be your next to do? Or would you just say you could do post-secondary, you don't really need it? Is there any courses you could recommend that you think you've seen people take and it's been really helpful?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
Yeah. So I did post-secondary. I did post-secondary under the thought that I was going to be a vet, which obviously I am not. But that was where I thought I was going to go. So that was why I chose to do post-secondary. In general, for instance, like in my position now, the girl who was in my position before me, my old boss, she doesn't have any post-secondary. Her experience was purely shelter experience and slowly working her way up. We didn't have, it's not a necessary requirement. A lot of animal welfare is experience, just in terms of being there. There's a lot of background that's all these different areas and all this different stuff. We have to think about disease management, which is sort of a medical background. Sometimes we're the ones that have to help fix a wound or, give fluids or give meds. Those are all medical kind of backgrounds. Sometimes we're the ones that have to help with fundraising. And, that's part of my job is to do fundraising and to do maintenance of the building and like all these other things that don't necessarily fall into one kind of category. So there's nothing really that's official that says, if you want to work in a shelter, you need to take this course. There are some courses out there and some webinars out there and things that can gain some experience. I can put it into I think I can put it into the chat here, but there's a course called Fear-Free Shelters. If you're a volunteer with a shelter or a vet clinic, you could get this course for free. But it's a really great course. You get a little certificate at the end that's about sort of teaching people how to keep shelters fear-free and how to use fear-free handling and fear-free techniques to make the animals in our care as comfortable as they can be, under the assumption and knowledge that this is a scary situation for them. And we might have to change the way that we interact with them as compared to an animal that's in our home or an animal that's in our friend's home or that we see on the street, because we're in a different situation and we have a different kind of outlook on what's going on with them. So that's a really good course. Other things that you could do, there's a website called aspcapro.org. Basically, it's the American SPCA professional website. It's all completely free, but they have a bunch of different trainings and series and webinars that are all totally free that you can look at. It's a lot of sort of veterinary specific stuff, rescue stuff. It's intended for volunteers, for people who are interested in learning some more stuff. They're not always the most exciting webinars, but they're really, really good opportunities to, understand a little bit more. So there's a whole series on canine communication that talks about body language in dogs and body language between dogs and between human body language and their interaction with dogs. So those are really great courses that you can take too, to get a bit of experience or understanding of what is going on in an animal's heart and in their head while they're here in the shelter.
That's super helpful. I actually have a few participants in mind that I'm like, these things will be great. I think just adding those kind of pieces to your resume can be really beneficial too.
Yeah.
To actually get in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's actually aspcapro.org. So
Oh,
I've
sorry.
added it there. Yeah, no problem. ASPCA is the general like American SPCA website. So it's still got lots of good information there, but it's sort of their company website.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put that one in the chat. Oh, it's already there.
Yeah, I popped it in there for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have another question.
Yes.
What is the most challenging part of your job?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, the most challenging part is seeing the animals hurt. You know, we get a lot of really sad stories, and some of them are the animal sadness, and some of them are people. Our surrenders can be really heartbreaking, and you know, my staff will sit with the people. I've like brought cups of water to people. I've made tea for people before. Sometimes it's really hard to sit with a person who's chosen to put the animal in for surrender because they feel like it's the only thing they can do, or they feel like it might be in the best interest of the animal. In a lot of cases, especially over the last couple of years, we've had situations where people, you know, have had this animal for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden, because of COVID, they've lost their job. They can't afford to continue to feed the animal and can continue to feed themselves. It can be a really heartbreaking, super sad, just emotionally draining situation to be with that person and, you know, help them understand that we're going to take care of the animals as much as we can. But it can be really hard. It can be really hard. So that would be what I would say the worst part for me is. I think everybody experiences a little differently, but I think that's the hardest for me.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, especially because a lot of the people I think that want to get into this industry, their heart is gold. And so you know that they're there to do the compassion piece and
Yeah,
excited to work with animals and all that, but you don't necessarily think about the hard parts about it.
Yeah.
That could be really, you know, devastating as somebody who comes in who loves animals, wants to work with them, but then you have to also be able to deal with those things. So that's really helpful to know.
Yeah. It'd be really hard not to judge too, right? You know,
yeah.
we love animals, we want them to do well, and it can be really hard for us sometimes to put ourselves in the shoes of those people and to say, if we don't have people, we don't have a shelter. You know, we always have animals that are going to come in, but if those people don't come and take those animals into new homes and don't donate and don't give us, you know, help, don't volunteer, then we're nothing. We don't have anything. So we can't forget those people and the community around us in sort of a pursuit of animal welfare. We have to remember, and we have to try and be compassionate to those people as well. Even when we don't agree with what they're trying to do or what they have done, or their decisions, we have to try and be compassionate to everybody and understand that like we all are trying to do the same thing, which can be tough too.
Very, very much. I want to give anybody else an opportunity because I have more questions, but I know we're running out of time. So if anybody else has any questions, now is your kind of opportunity. And then if not, I have one more question. Lily, do you have a question?
What is the most enjoyable part in your job than the hardest part that you have to deal with on a daily basis?
Oh, enjoyable. I love adoptions. It's people cry a lot.
Yeah.
Which makes me cry because I'm an emotional person,
Me
as
too.
are a lot of people who work in this field. We all have emotions. That's why we want to work in this field. So I find adoptions really rewarding. It's really wonderful sometimes to see people really make a connection with an animal and to see that animal really come out of its shell and thrive with a person. And you know that they're just going to love them forever. It's really wonderful. Hardest part, I think on a daily basis, which we don't get surrenders every day. So although I would say surrenders are the hardest part of my job in total, on a daily basis, I think it's the number of calls we get from people who we can't help. We get a lot of phone calls every single day from people who, you know, have found injured animals, who need to surrender an animal, who are in a rough situation or have lost a family member or a friend, and now they're stuck with their dog and they don't know what to do. We get a lot of people who just don't know what else to do. And it can be really hard to try and either help them through that difficult situation and see if we can help, or some people can be pretty mean.
Yeah.
We sometimes get phone calls where people will threaten to do things to the animal if we don't take them. We get calls. Yeah, people can be pretty crazy sometimes.
I don't know how I would deal in that situation.
It can be really hard because we have to try and maintain a really calm composure.
Yeah.
And it can be really difficult when, somebody wants something and they don't agree with what the answer you're giving them is. And it can be really difficult sometimes to be, like, I'm sorry, this is what I can offer for you.
Yeah.
If I don't have a kennel space for an animal, I can't take it in.
Yeah.
We have to think about their welfare, and their welfare is not living on the floor of my office.
Yeah.
Like, we have to think about that. And unfortunately, a lot of people are either put into situations where they're stuck in that position and they have to deal with it, or they don't necessarily think about that kind of thing. And they think that they can just call the rescue and will be able to take in their animal, no sweat, easy peasy. And they don't give themselves enough time to really look into a good placement for them. We get a lot of phone calls from people who are leaving the country like tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, we can only do so much about that. Sometimes we have space to help, sometimes we don't. And it can be really hard for people to hear that sometimes. So that can be really tough.
Yeah.
Totally. What would you say are some skills that would be really beneficial in this kind of industry to be successful?
Confidence in yourself. So you want to be confident in what you know. If you know, you should know. We have a lot of opinions in animal welfare, and stick with your beliefs, understand what your beliefs are. If you truly believe in something, then that will help you, because you'll find people that also believe in that, and it can really help you kind of fit into a team that has really similar beliefs. Other things that will be really helpful are customer service skills. We never think about us needing customer service skills because we're an animal shelter, but 90% of our interactions are with people. And like I said, some of them are not super nice to us. So we have to have really good customer service skills to work our way through that and to kind of maintain good relationships. We want people to have a good perception of shelters. Historically, people have not always had good perceptions of shelters. So we're trying to change that and make sure that people understand how much love we put into these animals. So good customer service skills is really great. Good belief systems are really great. Really kind of being able to pivot. We have a lot of things that change really fast. So the ability to work under pressure, the ability to work with a lot of things going on at the same time, and the ability to kind of pivot when things go wrong are really beneficial. Sometimes we have things that change real quick. And we have to make changes really fast, depending on what the situation is. We have to think on our feet a lot. A dog opens a kennel and is running around the shelter, eating all the food and yapping at the other dogs. I have to think about, okay, 1, how am I going to catch this dog? 2, is this dog posing a risk to other people, other dogs, or itself? 3, do I have people around that can help me? 4, how am I going to do this without getting injured? Because a lot of the animals are scared, right?
Yeah.
So we have to really pivot around things sometimes. So that's a really good skill to have too.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so much more that goes into it. I'm just
It's
like,
chaos.
I have to go play with puppies. And
Sounds
kids.
like
My husband says the same thing. He's like, your job is so easy. You get to just cuddle kittens. And I was like, no, it's not
Yeah.
like that.
If it was that would be amazing. But
That is a good part of it though. When you're stressed and you're having a bad day and you're like, oh God, you know what I wouldn't give to have a puppy cuddle? Well, you can do
and
that.
then you have it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's great.
Yeah, totally. This has been really great, Lee. This is even just opened my eyes to, I feel like I often preach to people, volunteering can be really beneficial. It can be a stepping stone, but when somebody's looking for a job, that seems like really irrelevant, or, I don't really need to volunteer. I really just want a job. But if that could be the stepping stone to a job one day that you really want, is that a good idea? I think so.
Yeah. And a lot of it transfers too. You could volunteer with us and get a job at EHS because we all are doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of volunteers who come in from other organizations and we're all trying to do the same thing. So it's experience is experience in this field. We all share our knowledge and our people, and we bounce and we try and work together. So doesn't necessarily have to be specific to us or specific to somewhere else. We all kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
I have another
really good.
question. what is the most thing you guys need that for donations?
Good question.
Ooh, yeah, that is a good question. I mean, we need a little bit of everything. So we have a couple different types of donations. So we have like sponsorships, which are a year-long donation. You get a plaque with your name on it. We can put it on a kennel. So those are, so those help us maintain the facility and the area that the animals are actually going to live in. We have monthly donations, which are usually about $10 to $20, and it comes out monthly. Those are super helpful for us just in general. We have in-kind donations, which are one time. Often we'll have them in memoriam of someone, or today I got one that was a wedding, and instead of gifts, they asked for somebody to make a donation to a charity. So yeah, isn't that sweet? So we had that
idea.
Yeah. So those are really helpful as well. And then we have physical donations of stuff. So towels are really useful for us. We use a lot of towels. Yeah, especially when we have puppies because they destroy everything.
Yeah.
So towels are super useful. Wet food, dry food, toys, dish soap and soap, hand sanitizer, little things like that, pens. Like, it's a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily even think about. We have a wish list. So on our website, we have a physical wish list, and we also have an Amazon wish list, which is ideally to encourage people to be able to purchase items that they can donate and not have to actually come to our shelter, because people don't want to go places. They want to just.
I have like a lot of puppy pads, pee pads, that are just sitting, and I'm just waiting to like give them away to like a shelter that's in need.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Because my dog is fully potty trained.
Yeah, and we find a lot of people are like that, right? They got a puppy, and now the puppy is grown and doesn't need, harnesses or collars or pee pads or bedding or whatever, because they've gotten bigger. And all of those things are really useful. We have a lot of puppies that go into foster homes, and pee pads are like gold.
Yeah, definitely, and they're really pricey too.
Yeah, they are. They're substantial, and we hoard them because we need them all the time.
Yeah.
That's great. If nobody has any other questions, I think we'll wrap it up here. So that I don't miss anything that we've said. What does inclusion in the workplace mean in your industry?
I think for me, I know that there are scientific connections between the way that we treat animals and the way that we treat other people. And if we are offering inclusive workplaces, inclusive volunteer programs, we are teaching each other to be more compassionate to everyone. And I think that we as a society can't and shouldn't have just compassion for animals or just compassion for people. It really goes hand in hand. So for me, that's kind of what I see as valuable. And especially here, I have sort of family connections with, I have a cousin who's got a pretty severe learning disability, but she loves animals and she really thrives with animals. And, for me, I want to see that, that connection, that human animal bond between what she has with animals and other people that might not be able to get into a position like this. I think that it's more than accessible to be able to offer things for everybody and to be able to bring everybody into a position where we can all be compassionate and we can all see the human animal bond and we can all benefit from it and we can help more animals, because that's the point, right?
So much. That's so great. What changes or benefits have you experienced in your workplace due to good inclusive practices?
I think that for me, we've seen, obviously my team is pretty small, so we're not, crazy everywhere. We don't have people from all over the world and all over the places, but for me, I've seen some really valuable learning opportunities for people. We have a volunteer at the moment who is deaf and uses sign language as a main sort of communication. And I've seen so many of my other volunteers who maybe didn't really understand they didn't really want to learn sign language, or they didn't know anything about sign language. Now they're learning to communicate with each other, just because they've interacted with this individual who, is enjoying themselves and just wants to participate the same as everybody else. So now we're teaching each other, sign language and to learn to communicate with each other, despite some differences that we have, which I think is just so cool to see.
It is, like, give me chills.
Right?
That's like inclusion 101.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's amazing. I found it's amazing how many people have been like, I want to learn sign language now. Like, I want to be able to talk to him. I want to be able to have conversations. And yeah, I think it's just so cool.
It is. That's awesome. You guys are like leading the path here. Should have collaborated a long time ago. Is mentorship a common practice in your industry?
Yeah, I think so. It was for me. I worked with my previous boss in a different position, and she was my mentor at that time. And then she sort of taught me a lot of what the sort of management position was going to be. And I then took that experience and moved into the position that I'm in now. I don't know if everywhere is the same.
Yeah.
There are individual groups that do different things, but I think that there is a lot of building on experience. And in my experience as well, people are really willing to help each other out, because the more people that we have that know, the information and have the knowledge to better the organizations and better the lives of these animals and better the lives of the people that we're interacting with, then the more we can do, the better we can do. So it's beneficial for everybody to sort of mentor each other and to help each other grow.
Yeah. And I think within your industry, even like the amount of volunteer opportunities that are out there, that in itself is a mentoring experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It's like you might go in there because you love animals, but what you learn from it is going to be substantially more than just loving animals. So
yeah.
Why did you decide to become a mentor?
I like teaching.
You're very good at it, I must say.
Thank you.
Smart.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always really liked teaching. I also teach curling. I've been a coach for a number of years. I've always really been very proud of the shelter and of sheltering and of, understanding animals and understanding and being compassionate towards animals. And I think that it's a really valuable thing to teach others. Unfortunately, we as society don't always have the best perception of shelters. There were a lot of people that believe that if you send an animal to a shelter, it's going to be the, ASPCA wings of an angel, black and white,
totally.
Sad dogs.
Yes.
And that's not the case. It's not the case in so many ways. So, what people see in media isn't always what the shelter actually is. So, in my eyes, in teaching and mentoring people and showing what we can do and showing how we can be a community together and benefit not only the animals in our community, but also the people, is really valuable, because it's teaching people more about what a shelter can do. And then those people are going to go tell other people, like, hey, I learned this really cool thing about cats, and like, oh, hey, I learned that, cats have floating clavicles. What a fun fact.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Did not know that. There we go.
There you go. Yeah. That's why cats fit through like anything, because their clavicles are not attached to their shoulders. So fun fact.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But we don't understand animals that well, and the people who are in the field, we gain these knowledges and we learn these things. And I think it's really valuable to sort of share that with everybody, so that then they can share it with other people, and we can teach our children to be compassionate, and we can teach our other, the people around us to be compassionate. And because we know that there's that scientific connection between compassion towards animals and compassion towards people, if we're there to share that information, then maybe future generations will be better to each other as well.
Right.
We hope, anyways. I hope.
That's a great stance. I feel like that's very similar to the work that we do. Is like, I'm also a sharer of our program and what we do and what we can offer and all that kind of stuff. And when I get to do that with people, that's exactly my hope too, is like that one person is going to hear this, see the benefit, and share it. And then from there, we're going to create this whole inclusive community that we live in, where everybody is valued and respected members of their community in one way or another. So awesome.